Namaste. As the Vice President of the Adelaide branch of the Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society, welcome to all friends and devotees to the memorial event for the revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji. Ajayaprana Mataji visited Adelaide over a period that spanned more than 3 decades. This memorial event to honor revered Ajayaprana Mataji here in Adelaide within a community that she established is not only fitting but essential. Our special welcome to Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji, who is the president of the Sarada Vedanta Society of New South Wales and South Australia. Thank you for presence today, Mataji, and your continued guidance. I will now hand over to Mrs. Sureka Sen, who is the master of ceremony for today's function. Thank you, Sureka.
Thank you, Nitin. Pranam Mataji. Indian Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore wrote, "Say not in grief that she is no more, but say in thankfulness that she was. A death is not the extinguishing of a lamp, but the putting out of the lamp, because the dawn has come." The celebration of life is not a somber affair. Instead, we find lots of happy memories and storytellings. The focus is not on the person, death of the person, but on the joy the person brought in our lives. This afternoon, we meet here to celebrate, honor, and pay tribute to the life of our very dear, most revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji, to give thanks for her truly wonderful life and the experiences that many of us shared. I'm Shurek Sen, your MC for this event. Before we begin, we need to do a little housekeeping. Our today's COVID marshal is Bhavani Parasivan, only called as Bunny there. And if you haven't already QR scanned or given your details in the book at the front by the door, please do so now. And also, please turn off your telephones to silent or whatever. The bathrooms are to your right as you go out of this room. Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda had an intense desire to establish a mutt, nunnery for three holy mothers, Sri Sarada Devi and her daughters. Even before the mutt for the monks was established, Swamiji gave the order direction to the goal and explained how to attain it. The motto Atmana Mokshatham Jagat Hitaya Cha, meaning for one's own salvation and the welfare of the world. Sri Sarada Mutt and Ramakrishna Sarada Mission, India, the women's wing of the well-renowned Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission, was formed back in 1954 in India. Most revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji, a senior nun of the Sarada Mutt and Ramakrishna Sarada Mission, India, arrived Sydney, Australia in 1982. Revered Mataji reached Sydney in April 1982, accompanied by Brahmacharini Girija, who later was initiated into sannyasa and became Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji. The very first branch of Sarada Mutt and missions outside India was established by our dear Mataji in July 1982. Mataji named the branch Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society of New South Wales. Revered Mataji began traveling to Adelaide a few times a year from January 1983. She gave parlor talks and ran retreats. Vedant, then, within few years, with her blessings, the Sarada Vedanta Society of South Australia was formed, with Mataji as its president. Under Mataji's guidance, devotees started to meet for meditation, prayers, sessions, and listen to Mataji's talks on alternate Sundays at devotees' homes. And now, for the past 15 years or more, these sessions have been held at the residence of Nirmala and David Coombe of Tusmore, and who have been so generous to commit to open their house to us every other Sundays. In September 2011, due to poor health, Mataji, our revered Mataji, decided to return back to India, and Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji took on the responsibilities as a president. On return to India, our revered Mataji took over as the president of the Thrissur and Trivandrum centers, and she was also elected as the senior vice president of the Sri Sharda Math and Ramakrishna Sharada Mission, India. Mataji carried on with her official duties, plus as a Pravrajika nun, she traveled all over India to give talks. Revered Mataji's health was deteriorating, and on Thursday, the 14th of May 2020, she went into Mahasamadhi. She passed away. Mataji has left behind an amazing legacy, and we pray and hope the legacy will inspire all of us. Today is going to be a hard day, but we are thankful for your presence and support. We begin with Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji's talk. Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji is a senior nun of the Ramakrishna order. She is the present president of the Ramakrishna Sharada Vedanta Society of New South Wales and South Australia, and we are very grateful to have her with us today here for this very special event.
ॐ अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Salutations to the Guru, who has made it possible to realize him, by whom this entire universe of movable and immovable objects is pervaded. Today, we are celebrating the life of such a Guru, Most Revered Ajayaprana Mataji. Having dedicated her life to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, Mataji lived the high ideals taught by them in her life. Sri Ramakrishna repeatedly proclaimed that the aim of human life is to realize God, the inner self. Everything that we do in our life should be with this one goal, self-realization. It is God seated in the hearts of all, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. We have heard Revered Mataji expressing this idea in the words, the heart of man is a seat of God. Sri Ramakrishna exhorted his disciples to make God the pole star of their lives. His advice to the householder devotees was, hold on to God with one hand and do your work in the world with the other. However, he asked his monastic disciples to hold on to God with both hands. to give oneself completely to God, to surrender wholeheartedly to God, so that He may work through us. That is what Rev. Ajayaprana Mataji did, and it became all the more evident when she came to Australia in 1982 to start the first foreign center of Sri Sarada Mat, away from the support of the large monastic community and the guidance of the senior Matajis. In those days, the letter took almost 3 weeks to reach India, and the reply takes another 3 weeks. So there was, and phone calls, you had to book the trunk call, it was too expensive. Ajayaprana Mataji had to depend solely on Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother for help and guidance in her work in the New World. Mataji used to say that problems and difficulties are part and parcel of life. So don't pray to God not to give you problems. Rather pray that you may have the strength to face those problems. She was telling us what she was doing. When faced with some particularly difficult problems, Mataji used to say, I am ready to go to the end of the world to do Sri Ramakrishna's work. I am only asking him to show me what I am supposed to do. I don't mind any amount of difficulties. It is this sense of complete surrender to Sri Ramakrishna that gave Mataji the conviction that it's a great privilege to belong to the Ramakrishna order. She used to remind us, the younger nuns, remember that first of all we represent Sri Sarada Mat, then the Ramakrishna order, then Hinduism. Behave always holding up the name of the Ramakrishna order. Which prana you are is not important, because our names all end with prana. So Maharaj is saying which prana you are is not so important. What is important is that you are a member of the Sri Sarada Mat. Maharaj used to give similar advice to the devotees. In our annual general meetings in Sydney of the Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society, at the end, Mataji always give a short talk. In her pep talk, she used to remind the devotees that in the eyes of the general public, they are the representatives of the Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society, and they should never behave in any way that might taint or tarnish the good name of Vedanta and Sri Ramakrishna. It's our responsibility and duty to uphold the high ideals. Mataji was particularly fond of one portion in the first chapter of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Those who have read the Gospel, you know, towards the end of the Gospel, you can see Sri Ramakrishna asked M. Mahendranath Gupta, the recorder, to visit him in a devotee's house in Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna said, I'm going to Balaram's house. You come and see me there. M agreed and took leave. Then he hesitated, thinking that perhaps that may be a rich man's house. They may not let me go inside and meet Sri Ramakrishna. So he came back and told Sri Ramakrishna, I would rather visit you here. Maybe the rich man may not allow me. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, why do you say that? Why do you think like that? Just mention my name. Say that you want to see me. Then someone will take me to you. Someone will take you to me. And Mataji used to say that this assurance that Sri Ramakrishna gave is not just for M, for all of us. Just mention that we want to see him. Somebody will take us to him. The Guru will come and guide us and take us to Sri Ramakrishna if we are really sincere and earnest. Mataji spent 29 and a half years here in Australia, giving that spiritual guidance to sincere seekers, guiding them to God. She was there always for the devotees, day and night. There are instances when people ring Mataji at middle of the night with some problem, completely unconnected with spiritual life, family problem. But Mataji was there always to give them solace. Swami Vireshwarananda, the 10th president of the Ramakrishna Mutt, used to say that Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother have laid down a lofty ideal for the spiritual teachers to follow, namely, not to let a day go without service to disciples. As a spiritual guide, you should be always ready to help the disciples day or night. And we can see that in the life of Mataji. I'll conclude with one teaching of Holy Mother that Mataji was very fond of and often quoted. Holy Mother says, whenever you are in difficulty, just say to yourself, I have a mother. And then Mataji would elaborate. Holy Mother is standing just behind you with her hand on your left shoulder. Then with her characteristic style, Mataji would add, don't ask me why the left shoulder, that's how I feel. Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother were living presents to Ajayaprana Mataji, whose whole life was dedicated to them. My salutations to Mataji.
Thank you, Ajayaprana Mataji. You were with Mataji for nearly 30 years, and during that time, you were one of the people closest to Mataji. Our Mataji was a great person who added so much to every life she touched. She had larger than life presence in many people's heart. Every one of us here today has had our life touched, perhaps in the tiniest way, or perhaps totally transformed by our Mataji. We would not be here otherwise today. Her life mattered. We will now listen to the reminiscences of various devotees and members and friends who have came in touch with Mataji. We start with Robert Grant. Robert told me that he was present at the airport with the group to greet Mataji when she first arrived in Sydney back in April 1982. Robert Grant served Mataji from 1983. He has been mentioned as a Karma Yogi and a Bhakta Yogi, which is an extremely rare accomplishment. He was by Mataji's side all along. Robert's respect and love for Mataji cannot be explained by words. Robert was a young man when he first met Mataji, but let us listen to Robert now about his journey with revered Mataji.
So as mentioned, I first met Mataji on what I think was a rainy autumn day in 1982, when she arrived at Sydney with the then Brahmacharini Gayatri Devi, as been mentioned, to start the centre in Sydney. And I drove them, along with a lady devotee, from the airport to Vilma Spencer's apartment in McMahon's Point. Vilma was one of the founding members of the Vedanta work in Australia, and she hosted them, the two nuns, for a few weeks. And a nice touch, from the apartment's living room, there's an iconic view of the Sydney Harbour and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So those first few weeks, Mataji had this classic view in Australia. Before meeting Mataji, I had started practicing yoga and meditation and studying Vedanta. And I had attended talks and a retreat with Swami Ranganatananda. And those of you who know about him, he was just a spiritual giant. So he has a big impact on you. And without going into the details, all this was helping me a lot because I'd been through some very difficult times. Sorry, I didn't want to cry. So, life had served up quite a few blows to me as a young man. So I was very confused and demoralized. So the Vedanta and the yoga, it was injecting a lot of power and energy and positivity into me. So I took it as a very big thing. And I found in those first few months after Mataji arrived that a lot of help was needed to get the center established. And so I decided to get right behind it because I knew that it was going to help a lot of people like it helped me. So I took leave of my career at AGC, that's a big investment and insurance company at the time, and began serving Mataji in the society full-time in 1983. This was pioneering work, and to add to the challenges that pioneers face, Mataji would wryly declare, this is Mataji's wonderful sense of humor. She would say, I have the 4 negatives: brown skin, gray hair, ochre robes, and I'm a woman. So she knew it would require an extra effort to break through these negatives, and she did, to get the center established. Apart from helping with the administration and weekly activities in Sydney, I accompanied Mataji on countless lecture tours. And I've written an article about this, so I'm just quoting from that. Trains, planes, cars, and buses conveyed us to and through most of the major cities in Australia, to Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, India, and beyond, interacting with all manner of people, from the simplest of devotees to the brightest of scholars, the young and the old, the media and millionaires, seekers from various faiths or none. Such a wide variety of experiences, they could launch 1,000 anecdotes. And I don't have time today, but I'll just share a couple of favorites, amongst other things. We used to go several times a year to Newcastle for the day. Mataji would conduct a class there. And we'd start off in the morning, reach Newcastle by lunchtime. Mataji would give a talk late in the afternoon, and then followed by dinner. And then we would drive in the evening back to Sydney. Now, on one of these trips, there was one of our close devotees. He wanted to do the driving that day, drive Mataji up to Newcastle. And he's a person of very talkative nature, and it's an opportunity for him to get some personal time with Mataji. So he would enter into deep discussions with Mataji while we're driving along. I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm noting he's keeping a rather too casual eye on his driving. So I was watching very closely. I was keeping a closer eye on the road, I think, than he was. Anyway, in the evening after the dinner, the talk and the dinner, we're driving back in the dark, and he's particularly interested in some of the points Mataji had raised in the talk she'd just given in Newcastle. So again, he's deep in discussion, and we're driving along a dark section of road. And then suddenly I found we were plunging down a very steep grass embankment. And I can tell you the car nearly rolled over. It was just such a close thing. Because he didn't even put his foot on the brake, he was so shocked. We were going fast, and I think that prevented the car from rolling over. And luckily there was nothing in the way. So the car came to rest many meters below in some office building car park. Then there was this moment of silence. And then Mataji quietly said to our devotee, what are you doing? Turn the car around and let's continue on our way. And of course, our devotee was stunned, and he just looked at Mataji in awe, and he said, Mataji, how can you say that? How can you be like that? So it was an example of Mataji's kind of calmness and steadiness of mind. Needless to say, he was then very, very careful on the rest of the drive home. And I mean, luckily the car wasn't damaged too, for that matter. One phrase Mataji urged us to remove from our lives was, I can't. She would say, don't say I can't, say I will try. And I can tell you, I think maybe out of all the lectures and teachings I've heard from Mataji, this is the one that's gone deepest into me. To this day, whenever I find those two words coming up in my mind, I have to dismiss them. And because of that, I can tell you, I have taken on challenges I think I wouldn't have otherwise, because I simply can't say I can't. I've got to actually try and plunge in and take on the challenge. The other favorite teaching, Mataji would always talk about Sri Krishna's attitude when faced with a looming problem. And we know from the life of Sri Krishna, so many big things he had to deal with. So Mataji would say, Sri Krishna's approach is, get up. Don't wait for the looming problem to come to you. If you don't get up and try and face it, as it's approaching you, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and it's ultimately going to come crashing down on top of you. So at the very least, get up and meet it at least halfway. And I love that teaching. Again, very practical and very powerful. One thing about Mataji that filled us with fear was Mataji's total lack of fear of heights. Anytime we came across a cliff, Mataji would rush over and insist on standing awfully close to the edge. Like a child, she would say, it's all right, I just want to peer over the edge. And we'd be holding her arms, taking a firm hold of her arms. Mataji's health issues meant many visits to specialists and hospitals. And this led to some interesting conversations, as it was the first time that these doctors and nurses and others were meeting a Hindu nun. So many times they'd be quite intrigued. And even in the lead up to Mataji having a pacemaker installed, she's in the operating theatre and she's having a philosophical discussion with the surgical team. and they're having a discussion about prayer and meditation. And I love this. They asked Mataji, what's the difference between prayer and meditation? And Mataji said, prayer is when we talk to God. Meditation is when we listen to him. And they really loved that. And I loved it too, and I heard it from Mataji afterwards. One time, I would have to answer a lot of questions for Mataji. So I'd always be giving these people Mataji's age. And often they wouldn't believe what her age was. She looked so much younger. So one time one nurse asked, what's your secret, Mataji? How do you keep looking so young? So Mataji was a bit tired, so I jumped in and I said, oh, regularity. And Mataji liked it. And then she then decided to explain more fully to the nurse. So again, here's a nice teaching. Mataji told her, as far as possible, get up and go to bed at the same time, eat your meals at the same time, be regular in your hours of work and leisure, and so on. And the point is, like a dog, our body and mind like routine. And if we stick to it, they will serve us better. We will be healthier, have more energy, and a clearer mind. And that's, I feel, just such a wonderful teaching and simple. And I'm going to just conclude now. I have a book called The Day Book of Saints. And every day of the year is the birthday of several saints. And each day in a few paragraphs, you read about the life and work of one of them. And reading this book, I found that saints in all the world faiths share the following characteristics. One, once they find their mission in life, they are entirely focused on it, entirely absorbed in it. They cannot do anything half-heartedly or sloppily. Two, In the course of their mission, they pass through times of great difficulty. They face the kind of obstacles that would break the spirit of an ordinary person. They can endure and overcome these obstacles because they have had some direct experience of God. They've tapped into that infinite power within them, free. They willingly give up their own time, convenience, and energy to serve others, not just for a few days here and there, but day after day, week after week, year after year, even to their last breath. 4, and I know this very well, saints are not soppy goody-goodies. They can be stern, demanding, and blunt when needed with those who serve them and with those who seek their help. And I think all of you who know Mataji, she had that habit. She could be quite tough when needed. But they are also the greatest friend you can ever have. They feel for you, they pray for you, they suffer for you. They'll never let you down. And finally, 5, the lives of the saints are not forgotten. They echo down through history. I have seen these qualities in Mataji, so I believe that in Mataji we've had the company of a saint. And I'll just conclude by saying, to give full honor to her memory, let us all strive to live up to the high expectations she had for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. We are sure you have exceeded Mataji's high expectations. Our next presentation will be reading of messages from Malika Prasad and Warren Stevenson. The messages will be read by Nirmala Ku, and that will be followed by Anjan Bise, a longtime devotee of Mataji, singing a song which was written and composed by our revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji.
Pranam Mataji. Now, I'm very short. This is from Malika Prasad, who is still in India a year and a half after we planned this memorial. I'm going to read it just as she wrote. She's very good with her words. Pujya Mataji Gayatriprana, dear Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society committee members, dear Robert, and all others who have gathered on this occasion. Warm greetings from Malika, from India, from my native place, Tulu-speaking, northern part of Kerala state. It is an absolute honor for me to say a few words about our dear Mataji Ajayaprana. Though she is not physically here among us at this moment, I'm certain she is among us in spirit and watching over today's proceedings closely so that we perform it all correctly. I can almost see her attentive face scrutinizing every word we say and everything we do so that we conduct it appropriately. I can almost hear her prompts every step of the way like a caring mother and teacher. I always saw our dear Mataji as a lady who was proud of her heritage, proud of the Sarada Vedanta Society, dignified, elegant, intelligent, analytical, bold, decisive, commanding, outspoken, a true warrior in furthering the mission's cause that she so nobly dedicated her life to. The way Mataji spoke, walked, instructed her disciples, exuded confidence, conviction, command, and affection. These admirable qualities earned her deep respect from all those she encountered both in India and Australia. Her achievements in Australia are no short of miracles. Coming from India to a new country, new culture, not knowing who she could count on and who she couldn't, must have been extremely challenging. Definitely not a job for the faint-hearted. Over the years, Mataji established herself as a well-loved and trusted guru in Australia. She successfully set up an ashram in Sydney, then a library, a community centre offering services to disadvantaged youth in the community, established centres in various cities of Australia and New Zealand. She travelled to those centres offering talks and workshops. Underneath all these demanding schedules, she was coping with diabetes. We can only admire our dear Mataji with a deep sense of reverence. My humble connection with Mataji began years ago. Initially, she used to stay with late Dr. Ravindran and family. Ravindran contacted me and inquired if I could host Mataji's talk at my place. That happened to be her very first public address in Adelaide. Since then, I always attended Mataji's talks and workshops, also hosted a number of those. Mataji encouraged me to sing devotional songs at these sessions. Whenever I didn't extend my voice sufficiently due to nervousness, she would tell me off. About 15 years ago, she gave me about 6 of her bhajan compositions, to which she had also put music. She got those bhajans recorded on a tape in her own voice for me to practice and get those recorded properly at a studio. I dragged Raji and Jayashri into the project, and the 3 of us sang together. Mataji was close to 80 then, still had a strong singing voice. When I commented on a fine singing voice, she said, in her younger days, during special occasions at Sarada Mat, she would sing all night until her voice broke and she couldn't sing any further. Such was Mataji's passion for singing and bhajans. Early last year, I visited Mataji at the Thiruvananthapuram ashram. She was very pleased to see me there. She instructed the nun in charge, also the kitchen staff, to look after me well. She assigned a nun who spoke Kannada to take me around in Thiruvananthapuram to places like the famous Sri Ananda Padmanabha temple. On the morning I left, I had to catch a taxi at 6 a.m. to the airport. She came out to say goodbye to me. She instructed the driver not to overcharge me and also to help me with my luggage. Such was Mataji's hospitality. With a heavy heart, I took leave, fully knowing I may not be seeing her again. Whenever Mataji spoke, it was clear to me that she must have been drawing a great deal of inspiration from the great Swami Vivekananda. Her encouragement for people to be courageous in life almost resounded with Swamiji's famous quotes, "Arise, awake. Do not stop until the goal is reached. You are the creator of your own destiny. If you think of yourself as strong, you will be. Strength is life, weakness is death." I feel extremely blessed to be a part of Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta movement during the last 40 years, and to be able to link into the wisdom of these great souls like Sri Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda. Once again, I thank the organizers for this great opportunity to reminisce on our dear Mataji Ajayaprana. Bye for now. Look forward to catch up with you all when I return to Adelaide, Malika. Now I'd like to read a little from Warren Stevenson, who was our first treasurer of the society when it first started and was so for many years. Now, I had written to Warren to say, Warren, would you be able to come and say a few words about your relationship with Mataji? And this is the reply I got. Thank you, Namala, for the offer to speak on Sunday. In my world, there is only one Mataji. My Mataji has a special place in my heart and mind since the first time we met, and has been a major inspiration in my life. My Mataji is unlike any other earthly human I have known, radiating a unique spiritual element that I do not have the words and understanding to define. My Mataji lives within me and will stay with me forever. I am not able to publicly release the depth and scope of my feelings for my Mataji. Therefore, I need to decline your kind offer to be part of your memorial. This is not an excuse, just the best I can do to convey my feelings to you in the hope that you can somehow understand. It is, isn't it? And Anjan's going to sing one of Mataji's songs.
As Malika has already said that originally Malika, Raji and Jayashree sang this song. And I didn't even know that it was recorded. And many years later when I got the tape from Malika, so then I just learned that song from there. So I'll sing. That's not only lyrics, the composition is also Mataji's, the tune, everything is Mataji. काली मंदिर के योगी भवतारिण का पुजारी मम मानस गुय अधिवासी राम कृष्ण अवतार श्री राम कृष्ण अवतार जय राम कृष्ण अवतार जय त्रिभुवन का आधार जय कलयुग का आधार राम कृष्ण भगवान जय कलयुग का आधार राम कृष्ण भगवान भव भय भंजन हारी मुनि मानस स्वैर विहारी लीला विग्रह धारी राम कृष्ण अवतार भव भय हंजन हारी मुनि मानस स्वैर विहारी लीला विग्रह धारी राम कृष्ण अवतार जय राम कृष्ण अवतार जय त्रिभुवन का आधार जय कलयुग का आधार राम कृष्ण भगवान जय कलयुग का आधार राम कृष्ण भगवान हरि हर ब्रह्म स्वरूपी माया मोहांधकार विनाशी अखंड चैतन्य राशि राम कृष्ण अवतार हरि हर ब्रह्म स्वरूपी माया मोहांधकार विनाशी अखंड चैतन्य राशि राम कृष्ण अवतार श्री राम कृष्ण अवतार श्री राम कृष्ण अवतार जय जय राम कृष्ण अवतार जय त्रिभुवन का आधार जय कलयुग का आधार राम कृष्ण भगवान। काली मंदिर के योगी भवतारिणी का पुजारी मम मानस गुय आदिवासी राम कृष्ण अवतार श्री राम कृष्ण अवतार श्री राम कृष्ण अवतार।
Thank you, Anjan. That was really beautiful, beautiful. We all enjoy it. A number of devotees will speak today about their experiences with dear Mataji. We start with those longest association with Mataji, Mataji and her Adelaide visits, and concluding with the last Australian devotee to get initiated from Mataji. We will start with Chandran. Oh, Chandran Gulasegaram, please come. Thank you.
Mataji and friends, I'm just going to dwell only on the impact that our Mataji had on the friends that got together and also my family. The Mataji entered our Adelaide scene at a critical point. In the 1970s, a time when a lot of people were migrating in because the White Australia policy was removed, and a lot of Indians came, and our family came in 1974, and we had 3 children, and they were very impressionable age, and we felt that something has to be done because they are forgetting their language, they are forgetting their religion, their culture, their clothes that they wear, and so on. I'm not saying that Australian culture and their code of practice is not admissible, but we mustn't forget our background. So what we did was, there were a group of us in the 70s. We came in 74, so it was in 79, about 5 or 6 families, we got together, we had a meeting, and we formed a group mainly to look after religion. We felt that if we are on the religious path, then all the others will fall behind there. The children will not forget their culture, their all the other aspects of food and clothes and all sorts of things. So we formed, and we were puzzled what to call this society. And who comes, God sends people at the correct time. And Swami Damodarandaranji was here, and he said, what do you call it? Vedanta. So we call it the Vedanta Society. And so we had, what we did was, that time there was no temple, we had moving from house to house. We had groups, we met regularly, and we had some visits from outside,
from India and so on, monks and no none that time. So that was 1979. And so we still, even though we felt a bit comfortable, not completely. And that's when our dear Mataji came on the scene. And that was timely. I think it was the 1982 or 83 or somewhere. She began to make regular entry, and we had very often meetings in Dr. Ravindran's house and other places. And from then on, we had great influence of a very dynamic lady, nun, who imparted important aspects of our religion, not like the usual manner when religious leaders come, they said, this is how it is, that should be done, and so on. So it is all in such a way, it is very difficult to digest. And that's when Mataji, her technique was different. Because if you teach something, you must have a captive audience. I seem to have a captive audience here, wondering what this fella is up to. But anyway, she definitely had a captive audience because the way that she conducted, being a teacher, I know that when I teach something, I must have reaction from the crowd, or at least they listen, not yawning away, bored, looking here, looking there, which I used to be when I was in school. So that was important. And Mataji definitely must have been a teacher. And not only that, must have been a science teacher, because every physics, is it? Yeah, there you are. So that means that everything that she was teaching, even before that, Swami Ranganathanji also was stressing that any truth in religion is acceptable only if it can be tested. If it's false, then we don't accept that. And that is how our religion is. So Mataji was in that direction. She was aiming in that direction. And so the youngsters, especially, I mean, always oldies come up, all right, but youngsters reluctantly come. But then when they sat for Mataji's lectures, they were impressed by her, because how do I know that? When I was telling my wife, I've been asked to give a talk. I think you better give a talk. I can't. Ramesh, my son, he rang us. And that time when Mataji's time, he was very young. I can't remember how old he was, but anyway, he was old enough to sit down there and get bored, but he didn't. So when I told him, he said, oh, Mataji, yeah, I enjoyed her lecture, because every time I go, I understand. It's not like the usual people, here I'm able to get, and she was so good. So that's how Mataji is. She always had a good sense of humor, and kept the audience entertained with the stories and anecdotes. And as Robert said, very strict also at the same time, very strict. She'll tell you all. And my daughter number 1, daughter number 2 is here, but Shankari, but Gauri in New South Wales, she was talking to me just before coming here. He said, you know, Dad, Mataji had that perpetual smile, always smile. And even if you look in the eyes, you can see the smile. So I don't know, I haven't looked in the eyes, but definitely always smiling. Okay, so anyway, sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time. I'll just finish. Knowledge of the Gita and scriptures was very extensive, and used the scientific knowledge to explain things. She was always approachable, and she was willing to, as you were saying, that even at Robert was saying, I think that even at midnight, people used to, huh? Oh yeah, right, that's right. Sorry, Mataji. It's old age. So people used to go and seek some sort of solution for their problems. When my daughter met Arun Agarwal, and so my wife and I was worried, okay, north-south meeting, how is the meeting going to be? And we went to Mataji, I think in Ravindran's house, I think, and there we sat down, and Mataji advised and gave the blessing, and with that they went. And even later, I remember that Gauri said that she got a Ganesha from Mataji for her housewarming. Can't remember when it is, yeah, old age. Yeah, however, whatever, Mataji has left her legacy, which the organization which is in New South Wales, and an organization here, and Mataji is there here, our Mataji now, following and conducting all the necessary things to function efficiently. And so even though that Mataji is gone, she is not gone from our hearts, she is with us, and she is giving us full guidance. So I'm sorry if I have been a bit taking too long. However, thank you very much. Thank you.
From here. Our next speaker is Padma Ishwaran, a long-time devotee of the Ramakrishna.
Hello, everyone. My talk will be a very simple personal experience shared. Some of you know that we migrated in 78. We lived in a country town called Peterborough. There was nothing there. And I had my two children who were 6 and 8, not even another Indian soul there. So to them, it was strange. And after a year there, I thought something must be done that they don't forget their culture and their religion and the teachings. In 79, we used to come down on the weekends for Peterborough to Adelaide. And I met Ken and Lalita Soman, who I knew from Singapore. We were attached with the Ramakrishna mission in Singapore. And when I lived in Singapore, everything was there at our doorstep, that we took it for granted. The mission was there, the temple was there, everything was there for us. And now my children have nothing. And when I met Ken and Lalita, who I knew from Singapore, they told me there's a Vedanta Society here, and they had Swami Ranganathanji coming, and they had like fortnightly meetings at different homes. So they asked me to join. And that's when I met Dr. Ravindran's family and Rajesh Chandrasekharan's family. And whenever we came down, we met. And in 1980, we moved permanently to Adelaide. And Swami Ranganathaji, we met on one visit when he came, and then Swami Dhammaranandaji started coming from Fiji. And I had a close link, fortunately, from Singapore with Swami Dhammaranandaji. He knew me from the age of 16 years. So he was very happy to hear that we had migrated, and he also made it a point to come more often. And I was blessed in a way that Swami Dhammaranandaji stayed with us and imparted some of the teachings to the children. But in 1983, Swami Dhammaranandaji's visit was not very often, might be once a year. In 1983, when Mataji started coming, and we had at least a few visits in the year, it did make a difference to the lives for us and for the children. And I just want to share an experience of the children. When we met as families in different homes, at our meetings, it's different to the meetings we have today. If you look around today, we have very young people, very few young people here. It's more the older generation. In those days, because each of us had 2 or 3 children, at the meetings, there were more children than older people. And to the children as well, it was a way that they made friends, they had fun, so they enjoyed coming to it. And as what I say, Mataji's talks was simple, and she made it a point to stress to them that they had to be strong. And Vedanta was a path for all of us. Doesn't matter what denomination or religion or group you came from. And she stressed it's all paths to one God. There's only one God, and it's different paths that lead us there. When my daughter was at the age of 12, she was in Anglican church school. And she came home one day and said to me, "You know, Mom, my teacher at chapel service was so stupid." So I asked her why. She said, if we didn't belong to that denomination, we are not children of God. And who is she to say whether we are children of God or not? And I thought Mataji's visits had made some bearing on the kids. I have Shankari to back me up on that because our children were of the same age. Swami Dhammaranandaji used to come, but he was a bit more severe on the children. He would pick on their pronunciation and tell them off if they talk with an Australian accent and things publicly at the meetings. But Mataji did not do that. And so, of course, the children related more closely with her and accepted her teachings. And I also want to share another experience. Niranjan Ravindran is not present here today. He was going to talk. Mataji stayed with that family for a long time before she moved to the Carters. And Niranjan shared this with me when he rang me to tell me he wouldn't be here today. And he said that one day Mataji asked him to come for a walk when she was staying with them. And he went for a walk and she spoke to him. And she came back and gave him a picture of the Holy Trinity. And he said that picture has gone with him to US, come back, and it's still with him and means a lot to him. So I asked whether I had the permission to share that with all of you. And I think I'll end with that. My talk might be a bit simple, but it's just a personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Padma. That was beautiful, because each of us have got a different story to tell today. Our next speakers is Mannu Thomas. I knew Mannu and Moti for a very long time before even I met Mataji. Mannu?
Pranam Mataji. Dear friends, today we celebrate the life of revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji, and I'd like to share with all of you my thoughts and feelings when I had the first darshan of Mataji. I had seen many photos and read the life of Holy Mother Sarada Devi. It is said that when anyone came to her for the first time, her innate motherliness put visitors at ease. It was in early January of 1983 that we were informed that Ajayaprana Mataji was coming to Adelaide to give discourses. We happily agreed to host the evening discourse. My late husband Moti was eagerly looking forward to Mataji's discourses, as he had spent several years in Calcutta as a student and went to Belur Math regularly. Many of us had gathered at our home and eagerly awaited Mataji's arrival. I was very anxious and worried about protocol and proper etiquette for the occasion. Finally, Mataji was at our doorstep with a smile that melted my heart. Her first words were, "Hello, how are you?" It was the Holy Mother that I saw in Mataji, as she put us all at ease with her beautiful, loving smile. Don't we all remember that smile of Mataji? Mataji's gentle voice expounded much knowledge for us to practice in our daily life. She was the catalyst that brought us all together and helped us to be more tolerant individuals. After all, we had come from different parts of the world with our own individual beliefs and practices. Mataji's presence certainly filled the vacuum that existed. We were holding our satsangs in our home in Port Pirie from 1972 with our children, and that's where I met, that's where the Sens came to. But Mataji's presence when we came to Adelaide certainly filled that vacuum that existed. She also conducted classes for the younger members of our families, and they listened with much love and respect for Mataji. Mataji, through her discourses, projected cohesiveness and understanding. This was extremely important for us as we were such a small community in Adelaide. Mataji had a profound impact on all of us, and we looked forward to her visits to Adelaide for her guidance and knowledge that she imparted to all of us. She had dedicated her life to enlighten us, and I feel extremely fortunate to have had this uplifting experience. The discourses were followed by dinner prasad, and everyone relaxed and conversed freely with Mataji. When we departed from South Africa, I least realized that I would have the opportunity to have the presence of a holy person in my home in Australia. Mataji's presence has left an indelible mark on me. I'll never forget her love, her kindness, conviction, and the firmness that she possessed in her chosen way of life. Last night, when I went to take my leave from Ajayaprana Mataji, she told me, "Mataji will let you know what you have to say tomorrow." She did. early this morning, I had a plethora of thoughts and emotions, and I'd like to share one with you. In 1992, I was organizing a dance program by the famous Orisi temple dancer, Sanjukta Panigiri. I was in a dilemma as Mataji was in Adelaide, and I did not know how to tell her that I had a prior commitment and would not be able to attend her discourses. Mataji immediately responded, "I'll come." That was easy. Fortunately, there was no discourse organized for that evening. The Panigiris felt very blessed. It just proved how approachable and understanding Mataji was. To our dear Mataji, may her soul rest in peace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you very much, Manu. We knew Manu and Moti from Port Piri days, and those were very beautiful, happy days we had then. Our next speaker is Tony Whipper. Tony was affectionately called Haridasi by Mataji, and she has traveled with Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji from Sydney to be here for this event. Tony.
Gayatripranaji was talking the other night about the need for a guru. And as part of the talk, she said, when you're ready, the guru will come to you. When you have the need is strong, the guru will come to you. But I think sometimes when you don't even know you have the need, and you don't even know that you're ready, the guru comes. And that's been my experience. I didn't set out to find a guru. I didn't even know that I needed one at all. I thought, I don't really need anyone to tell me what to do or how to live back then. But my husband, Larry, had become interested in Vedanta. I think early 80s, 81 maybe, or maybe 1980, and Swami Ranganathanandaji was coming regularly to Australia. Larry went to retreats and some talks, and I think I went along to a few talks. And, I thought that's interesting, and it, seemed good. Yep. But Swami Buddhashanandaji, who was a vice president of the order at the time, was coming to Sydney regularly, and Swami Ranganathanandaji told Larry to get initiated. And he said, we should get initiated together to go, spiritual life together. But at the time, I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but I wouldn't say there was this urge within me. And some things happened so that I was studying at the time, and there was an important exam on that day that had been arranged for Larry to be initiated. So that wasn't to be for me. Then Larry took his initiation, and Swami Ranganathanandaji came back, and at that time Mataji was coming, and he said to me, you have to take initiation from Mataji and you have to go together on spiritual life. So, and Mataji had come, and, just starting to understand a little of what was happening. I was open to the ideas and the ideals of Vedanta, but yeah, I was open to it. It looked interesting. It looked really good, but it was because Swami Ranganathanandaji said, you have to go on that path. You must go together. And Mataji was giving initiation when the society started. So I took initiation from Mataji without having, I had read about Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother
because Mataji had asked me to do that. And, you know, yeah, I was open to that. But I guess mostly I took initiation because I was said, Swami Ranganathanandaji said you should do that. Anyway, so I recently watched a YouTube talk by Swami Sunishtananda, where he spoke about the emotion of awe. Apparently people study this, and they, you know, the emotion of awe is an important emotion for us. He said the faculty of awe is an important emotion that should be nourished and nurtured in all of us, especially in children and young people. It's due to awe that children admire superheroes and they want to dress up as Superman or Wonder Woman and imitate their superheroes. Awe is the feeling you get in the presence of something vast that challenges our understanding of the world. Or awe is a feeling of respect and amazement that you have when you're faced with something wonderful and rather frightening. Awe shatters your expectations of how you think the world is, and it opens you to what's there. And regarding awe, the Swami went on to say that because we never think of ourselves as limited, at the back of our mind, we always think we're infinite and eternal. So when we happen upon something external that awakens or evokes a feeling of awe, like a magnificent scene in nature, a beautiful piece of music, or an inspiring personality, the urge to go beyond our limitations is awakened, and we get a glimpse of something larger, more beautiful, more profound than the everyday life we're accustomed to. In 1982, as a young woman in my early 20s in the western suburbs of Sydney, I was like a frog living in a small pond without thinking it was an ocean, without any knowledge or experience of life beyond the tiny well. When Mataji came to Sydney, we started going regularly to the classes on the weekend and spending some time at the Mutt and closely observing Mataji's daily life and habits. And a sense of awe and wonder was awoken in me by Mataji's presence. It was her unique personality, her capacity to impart knowledge about spiritual topics and to explain and inspire with talks and stories. It was her physical presence that carried with it an air of authority. And then there was something beyond that, the sense of access to something grander, a realm just beyond the everyday. So there was that sense of awe, and at the same time, there was something close and personal. So Mataji had often told us how when she was coming to Australia and also following in Swami Ranganathanandaji's footsteps in a way, that she would have to be expected to give lectures and talk to devotees who are accustomed to Swami Ranganathanandaji's high philosophical talks. And she told the Swami she was concerned about that. How would she be received by the devotees after having that experience? And the Swami Ranganathanandaji told Mataji, you don't have to give those high philosophical talks. What's needed in the chauvinistic Australia is the woman's touch, the mother's heart, the mother's energy. So he told her you have to love the devotees and live the life. And that's what Mataji did and what we've all seen her do. So Mataji told me once, I opened my heart to you and you walked right in and took up your seat. And I think many people who came in close contact with Mataji experienced that. She opened her heart and we all walked in to experience the motherly love. Although awe-inspiring and a bit exacting, there was another side to balance that. Mataji was down to earth, simple and open. She showed her love by taking an interest and showing concern in the small details of the life of those who came to her. Having an opportunity to be in Mataji's company Mataji's capacity to love others and to think of their welfare was really astounding. When Mataji was very unwell and was in hospital, she'd had surgery and she was recovering from that, the devotees took turns at serving her in the hospital and spending nights there. And at the time, I had some sort of family problems and I couldn't go very often. I wanted to go, but I couldn't go. And I had the opportunity to go once and spend one evening there in the hospital with Mataji and look after her. But she was, really ill, had been through a really hard time physically. And as soon as I got there, and after the initial greetings, Mataji started giving me advice, concern about my situation, talking all the time about me and all her care and concern about me. And rather than me being there to care for her, she was caring for me at that time. And it was a bit overwhelming, really. And it was so touching and disconcerting at the same time. I was supposed to be serving Mataji, not the other way around, particularly at that time when Mataji was helpless and in need of care herself. Mataji gave me advice on running a home, raising children, managing a career, and many other everyday things. She made the ordinary interesting, even potentially elevating by her stories and insights. Even everyday things like cooking, cleaning, gardening took on new meaning. Some of the small things she may have told me when I'm doing those tasks would come to my mind and make the experience at hand more meaningful and in a broader context. Having the opportunity to be in Mataji's company and observe her daily life and way of doing things and hearing her stories and teachings was like jumping out of the tiny pond for a while. I learned many things from Mataji about living well and getting on with others. I guess it would be called practical Vedanta. I learned to appreciate other cultures and social practices and see these in a broader context, not through a narrow Western lens. I learned to keep always a wide margin for errors, my own and the mistakes of others. I learned no task is small. Everything has significance and can help us grow if we use the opportunity wisely. I learned it's better to go slow and do things well, have fewer interests and go deeply into them. I learned about how a cultured person behaves. And I learned about that strength and energy and power come from within. That Mataji, as a child, she was considered a sickly child. Her family had protected her from doing lots of outside things because they thought that she was not healthy and strong enough to do that. So even though she had that physical, perhaps a weak physical constitution, who could have imagined that when we saw her, coming here and building up this society, caring for the devotees. So there was a strength and energy, a willpower behind that is amazing. So perhaps for me, the greatest teaching and ideal I got from Mataji comes from observing Mataji live her life dedicated to God. Everything Mataji did, all the care and love she gave the devotees who came to her, and the tremendous effort and energy she gave in building up Ramakrishna Sarada Vedanta Society in Australia, everything was service to God. Now I understand what that means because I've seen in practice and in action. I've understood the ideal to strive for, what the ideal to strive for is, even if it's not perfectly enacted. The goal and the way shine bright in my understanding. Mataji always said the love and respect she receives was not for her as a person, as an individual, but for the organisation she represented, and beyond that, for God. Vedanta teaches that loving and serving the Guru will ultimately take us to a space beyond reasoning, measuring, and thinking, to just enjoy and rest in unity and love. It makes me happy to think of Mataji, her life and her service, And although she's no longer here, that we can still meet in that expansive space of unity.
Thank you very much, Haridashi. Mataji loved to call you Haridashi, so we will call you Haridashi as well. Now, our next speaker is Robin English, whom I know also for very many years from Port Pirie days, like Mati and Manu Thomas. Robbie. Robbie will share with us her experience with Mataji.
We were privileged to meet Mataji about 25 years ago. I had advertised a chest of drawers that I wanted to sell and put it in some paper, I guess. And Stephen Carter walked in the back door, and I stepped right this way and showed him the cupboard, and he said, yes, I'll have it. And I don't know why, but we started talking about spiritual things. And my friend Elizabeth and I had both been raised as Christians, but we were not quite satisfied with that. And we'd been searching, looking further. And Stephen told us about Mataji and that she was either there or coming soon. Anyway, we went to our first talk with Mataji, and we instantly felt really, yes, we want to stay with this lady and keep coming to these talks. We really appreciated those years of the Carters having us and welcoming us to their lovely place up at Aldgate. They were really happy times for us and great learning time from Mataji. We became very fond of Mataji, and we felt she really helped us a lot along our spiritual path. And as Haridashi said, we felt she was really genuinely interested in us as individuals and our families. And each time we would see her again, she'd say, and what about Kirsty, and what about this, and what about that? She'd remember everybody. Just a little story, but once Mataji was giving a talk at the Coos, and I think we gave her a little gift of a bag of nectarines, I think. And she was holding the nectarines and she looked up at someone, not us, and she said, that's because they love me. And we did love Mataji, and we really felt she loved us as well. She was, yes, very motherly and warm and kind to us. My son James was 15 actually, and he met a Muslim girl, and her family converted him to Islam behind our back. And then he suddenly turned against us, and we were the work of the devil, and he wouldn't have anything to do with us. And he married this girl. Well, he was going to marry this girl no matter what. And I was a wreck, and Mataji was around, and I asked for an interview with Mataji, and we had some lovely personal time together, a bit shocking and a bit wonderful at the same time. She said to me, you've lost your son. I said, well, I've come here for comfort and love and support and some sympathy. And she says, you've lost your son. And actually, it was a really important thing to say to me, because I was still bargaining and still hoping, and is there going to be some way out of this? This is not going to happen. And so she says, you have lost your son, but mark my words, he will come back to you. And after quite a long, painful time and trying to follow Mataji's advice, he did come back to me, so much so that he told me once that I was a better Muslim than most Muslims, and I ain't a Muslim. But he felt the way I lived and the way I was more admirable than most Muslims that he knew. We had a last afternoon tea with Mataji. This was the most beautiful thing. She invited herself to our place. And so this was very exciting. Instead of inviting Mataji, she invited herself to our place. So I'm the cook in the family, and so I made pikelets with heaps of jam and cream, not thinking for a minute she'd actually take them. And there was just the three of us, Elizabeth and I, Mataji, Elizabeth and I, in her sitting room. And Mataji was just wonderful. She was so relaxed. She was so happy. She was so natural and childlike. And then it came to saying, we've got afternoon tea now, Mataji. And we bought out the pikelets with jam and cream, not thinking she'd eat them because of her diabetes, etc. And she wolfed into them and she absolutely relished them. And it was just the most wonderful time. And I think now on reflection, she knew that was going to be the last time that we were ever going to be together, because soon after that, she was to leave Australia. Elizabeth, because I'm speaking for Elizabeth as well, she wanted me to say particularly about her experience of having very strict Christian parents, very rigid, and not being able to relate to it very well. And when she reached adulthood, she was totally turned off, completely turned off. And this led she and myself to exploring other things. And then after listening to Mataji's talks, where she touched on all religions, science and literature, she became to have a better understanding and appreciating of our Christianity, for which we are greatly thankful to Mataji. So Mataji, we love you and we thank you for all you've been in our lives.
Thank you, Robbie. That was beautiful. I always, because I knew Robbie from back in my Port Pirie days, but when I met her here with Mataji, I never asked her how you come to know Mataji. But now I know that it was through Stephen Carter. But now it's my turn to speak about Mataji. Mataji, revered Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji, was my spiritual teacher, guru. I bow down to my Mataji. It was back in 1980s when we first attended Mataji's talk at the Hindu Ganesh temple in Adelaide. At the end of the talk and the question answers, there was the silent meditation time when suddenly I opened my eyes to find Mataji sitting cross-legged on the chair, deep in the meditation, with a beautiful glow on her face. There was something that connected me to Mataji. I tried to attend Mataji's talks as she visited Adelaide and slowly got closer to her. It took many years before I realized that I want Mataji as my spiritual teacher, guru. I traveled to Sydney late in January 2000, year 2000, for my initiation and spent a few days in Mataji's company. The afternoon before my mantra ceremony, suddenly Mataji asked me if I'm totally sure that I want to be initiated by her. I was surprised, anxious, and I asked, why you're asking me this, Mataji? I know you for so many years, and I want you as a guru. Mataji did not reply to me, but she had a little smile on her face, which I could see it still now. As my spiritual counselor, a sort of parent of mind and soul, Mataji took full responsibility of not only for me, but my family as well. I never felt shy to ask her advice, whether it was a happy day or difficult situation. Mataji helped me without fail. Once I told Mataji, we didn't want to disturb you, Mataji. And her reply was, you cannot disturb Mataji. Through my experience, I feel Mataji definitely molded my values of life through her teachings. Each time I attended Mataji's parlor talks in Adelaide, I felt spiritually uplifted, confident, and ready to move on. All my confusions were answered. Years back in one of Mataji's talk, and I think it was at Robbie's house, most probably on Fullerton, somebody asked, how will she like to come back in her next life? Mataji showed her saffron cloth and said with a smile, have I taken this thing to come back again? We were fortunate to visit Mataji a couple of times in Trivandrum since she went back to India. During our first visit, Mataji organized a trip to Kanyakumari. We started our journey from Trivandrum by car with Mataji, Pravrajika Chetana Pranaji, and Pravrajika Yoga Vrata Pranaji. I think Mataji remembered that during our previous trip to Kerala, it was the tsunami time and we could not go to the Kanyakumari. And I mentioned to Mataji that maybe Mother Goddess didn't want me to reach her. And then, or maybe she recalled that I always missed the travel to India with her when a lot of devotees here, they have done it. And I will always treasure the journey as long as I live, sitting on the with Mataji on the steps of the magnificent Vivekananda Rock Memorial, Kanyakumari. The Vivekananda Memorial is an unforgettable experience for me, and especially it was with Mataji sitting by my side. In loving Mataji, we are gifted with many memories that can never die. Mataji will forever be alive in our hearts. Mataji. Our next speaker, sorry about this, and next speaker is Anjan Beshe. Thank you, Anjan.
Pranam Mataji. I won't go into how I met Mataji, but I think I'll go straight into this particular time which changed my life. I had brought my mother from India. My mother's always working in India. So I had brought my mother for a holiday. No babies, no wedding, just rest and holiday. When she came here, within a short time, she developed a severe backache. So we took her to Flinders Medical Center. At night, we took her to the medical center. Next morning, when I went to the hospital, I found that she was in coma in ICU. Suddenly, as next of kin, I was signing authority for various procedures. Nitin could talk to the doctors about the medical condition and whatever, but I was the one signing the authorities because I was next of kin. The unexpectedness, the seriousness, the responsibility, and the fear of losing her while she was in my care was very difficult. I have 4 siblings. Day after day after day, I was telling that my mother was in critical but stable condition. At the same time, I was trying to maintain normality with my family, and that was taking its toll on me. Someone suggested to me, why don't you go and see Mataji? I absolutely loved Mataji's talks, but I thought to myself, how can Mataji help me? What can she know about family tensions, expectations of families? Anyway, with this mindset, I went to her. I found her seated in an armchair. And without doing pranam, without thinking anything, I just lay my head in her lap and burst into tears. I simply let go of all the tension I had been carrying for so long. I barely managed to tell her that my mother was in a serious condition. Then Mataji told me two things. Very gently, she said, Anjan, I have nothing to give you other than God's name. As I tried to tell about specific issues, Mataji said a bit firmly, remember, God never gives you any problem or situation which is more than what you can handle. She did not allow any self-pity, no recounting, no reliving past pain. I went to Mataji for one unexpected problem in life. She gave me assurance and the tools to face every problem in life. Many, many times when I'm overwhelmed, I hear her voice in my mind. Have faith that if God has sent you a problem, then simultaneously He has given you the strength to deal with it. And God's name, it's very powerful. Repeat it, hold on to it. It will give you strength. It will give you joy. I had gone to Mataji on that occasion with a terrible fear of losing my mother. Instead, Mataji introduced me to my eternal mother, to Holy Mother. She took me into the folds of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. My humble pranams to Mataji.
Thank you, Anjan. That was beautiful. Now we will hear David Koo, who was a favorite son of Mataji, I think. David.
Pranam Mataji. Well, so much stories to tell, isn't it? Personally, so many stories. In my situation, I've never been initiated, but my belief is strong in Mataji. I met Mataji and associated with her over the last 25 years, and have indeed been very fortunate and privileged to observe and participate in the many travels, Vedanta meetings, and talk with Mataji. These associations has been very valuable to both my family and my life. Help us to understand better the various forms of religious practices, can be quite confusing in this world, complex world, and increase our spiritual understanding that God is within you or within us. The aim of life is to manifest the divine within us. If we can do that, we'll see God. And even when I was at school, we're often told that reality is one, but wise man speaks of it in many different ways. Or my father's house has many doors. Which doors do you want to get in? You still enter the house. Mataji has always taught us to practice patience. I don't have too much of that, but practice patience, compassion, apathy, and perseverance in all life's practices, and never to blame other people. You know, it's very easy. We always blame the problem on other people rather than ourselves. And the mother and I have had the golden opportunity to be included in many trips to India and Sri Lanka, as far north as Almora, stay in the cold, and as far south as Kanyakumari, far east Kolkata, and west and Mumbai. During these trips, we learned plenty from Mataji, including the practice of tolerance and patience in all situations, And one thing I learned in all this trip is the patience of a lot of devotees. They come over and do pranam, do all the services, and then they say one thing: thank you for giving us the chance to serve you. And not to say, what can I get from you? From time to time, Mataji can be very, very strict, as probably you heard about, but at the same time fair, and at other times quite lenient. I often recall this when I was in Truchul. As you are aware, the Sarada is for ladies. I'm the only man in there. And I was put in a room of the Ramakrishna mission, full of spiders, and very dark. And they said, you go and sleep there. So I relayed that to Mataji. I said, look, I'm scared to sleep there because I was the only one. It's near the jungle. So Mataji turns around and said, I'll create a room for you at the Sarada Mat. It's forbidden, but that's what she did for me. Our children benefited from the present Mataji in bringing them up. She taught us to pray for strength, for us and for others. Keep on praying. She also taught us to do japa and give it to our children for it to serve as a bank balance from when they need it. No point worrying about it. If they are overseas, you just pray for them. Give them, increase their bank balance so they can draw on it when they need it. Mataji taught us to practice sincerity in every day's action, no matter what situation, and to use the ability of discrimination in life. This has been the guiding light in my life. To you, Mataji, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, David. That was beautiful because always Mataji, David was a special son of Mataji, I think. Because once I remember the last Guru Purnima in Sydney, when we traveled, all of a sudden David decided, I want to do your gardening when it was after lunch and we all were thinking, we flew in the morning and we had lunch and then we were trying to settle down. And Mataji I can still remember Mataji's face. She was really surprised, but she said, you cannot, Mataji's rules, you cannot enter the ashram for an hour. Is it 3:30, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock or 2:30 to 3:30, 2:30 to 3:30. But that was very nice, David, thank you. Our next speaker is Wendy Macklin.
Wow, what more can I say that's going to add anything here? But I think I should say that, almost a year now since Mataji left, but she hasn't left. We can see that. She's all around us. She left so much. She left her words and her music and her wisdom and her treasures of her guided meditation, which was the first thing that I couldn't believe when I heard that. And I was invited in 2016 to go to India, to Kerala, to Trivandrum to meet Mataji. It was her 90th birthday. And wow, this is you've all come here, and I was going there, and I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what to expect. And so I was just going with the people that I trusted. And I think I even said to Anjan sometimes, what will I do? What will I do? What will I do? She said, it's just like you're going home. And so I went in for her 90th birthday, and because I wanted to know, I Googled this place. And as we walked to the top of the hill, I saw these beautiful turquoise gates, and I knew, I said, well, there it is, there it is. And I think the ladies that I were, well, how do you know? You know, I said, well, I saw those gates. So we went in, and there was this beautiful place, and I could not believe what I was going into. And of course, the birthday was hundreds of devotees and people from all over the world. And in that time, she took time to give me initiation. And I didn't know, and my mantra, and I didn't know entirely what I was getting, but I had that mantra. And that is something that I can't believe how much that has given me for the rest of this time. And I went back and, I'll tell you about, so I told you about the gates, but when I went in there, straight away, there was Mataji waiting. Now, I didn't realize that she's always waiting for her people to come, for people to come home. And she was waiting there. She smiled, that beautiful smile. We know that beautiful smile. And then I met all the others and the nuns, and I have never felt in my life such warmth, acceptance, such just love, really. And the smiles. Later in the day, I went back for the first, we all went back for the first time for Arati. Oh, what's Arati? I don't know what this is, you know. So then she oversaw all that. And these, I think that struck me was, where do all these girls come from? All these girls came in and they all sat down in the front of this big hall. And I found out that these girls are taken in, and Mataji looks after them. The whole of the ashram is almost like it's committed to. That's the Vedanta, was that these girls come from poor homes and homes far away, and maybe they were orphans, and they go there and they study and they're looked after, and they're given this chance for their future, which I thought was wonderful. I thought that was just so amazing. And that was, had that been going for a while? Long time. So that had been going for a long time, but she oversaw all that and her presence. And then I saw her talk one day to a group of young nurse cadets, and we heard her saying the same that she said to all of us. Her message was always simple. You know, her message was always, do your best, always do your best, always try your hardest, you know, you have to be strong. And I remember she said to me, you have an intellect, use it, don't use your emotions. And those things, so simple, they stayed with me. So the arati was something that filled me with something that I had never experienced before, not in any church. Maybe watching Swan Lake one time, I thought that was pretty amazing. But just a bliss. And that was my time that I realized this huge sigh inside of me that I'd finally got where I needed to go, you know. Anyway, I didn't realize how big the ashram was. It went back and back and back, and there was dormitories and study areas and all sorts of things. And these girls were so happy. I'm looking at these girls thinking body language here. I know teenage girls, you know. No, all beautiful smiles, all really happy looking. And I thought, this is right, you know, this is so right for them. Anyway, she organized trips for us to go during the day. One time she said we were all going on a bus into the mountains, and there was a beautiful stream and people swim there. And I went, oh, cool, a swim. And I don't know that she heard me say, but it went back. And as we're getting on the bus, Wendy, you may not swim. Right. So I got that message and I knew that I wouldn't be swimming, and I didn't dare, you know. So the second time I went with Robert and some people from Sydney, and same thing, but it was even more beautiful that time. It was even more beautiful, and I got a chance that time to sit and talk with her, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget her wisdom. I'll never forget how loving she was, and what an amazing life, you know. And we are so fortunate to have that spiritual guidance. And I know when she went, I kind of kept thinking, where did she go? Where's she gone? Where's she gone? And I kind of realized now she hasn't gone anywhere. She got there. She's sitting there with Holy Mother now, and we are just so fortunate to have actually had her in our lives. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Wendy was a person, I don't think she has ever met Mataji here in Australia. She went directly, you know, because I met her through our Sunday meetings at Nirmala and David's house. And she just listening to Mataji's talks and the guided meditation attracted her to Mataji. That was beautiful, Wendy. Our final speaker for today's event is Vicky Viswanathan, the last Australian devotee to get initiated by our dear Mataji. Vicky.
Thank you, Sarada. Pranam Mataji. Good evening, everyone. My humble salutation to Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji, beloved soul. My journey with Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji began 17 years ago when Mataji was first introduced by Auntie Nirmala. During my early years of arrival to Australia, I was overwhelmed with life-changing situations. Attending Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji's parlor talks and prayer sessions delivered a sense of comfort and calmness, and a guided meditation provided a radiant energy within myself. Listening to Mataji's short stories relating to the life of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda, and the moral behind each stories provided the deep insight and realization within myself. Mataji often says, life is full of challenges and problems are part of life. When you face problems, have faith in God. Unflinching faith, do your daily prayers and japa, and you will gain the inner strength to face the challenges. And it reminded me of Mataji's pearl of wisdom. The company of people who are poised can help us to get poised. Being in the presence of a person who has peace inside helps us to carry peace at our homes. And that was so true. I was blessed to be around such a person like Mataji, who could mentally purify me just by being with her and listening to her talks. In 2011, Mataji left Sydney to spend her final days in India. And devotees from Adelaide, Sydney, and all over made annual visit to meet Mataji. And I was approached several times to join the group, but due to other commitments, I was unable to do so. But in 2019, I had the opportunity to visit Mataji in Trivandrum and to be part of her 93rd birthday celebration, the best trip of my lifetime. Mataji was looking frail, but she welcomed us with so much of love. She was in full radiant energy, talking to each of us asking of our family members, and was also asking of each family members of Sri Ramakrishna, Sarada, Vedanta in Adelaide and Sydney who were not present. She joined us for daily prayers and during our meal times. Mataji loves chatting and telling stories, and her enthusiasm was apparent when she was telling the story of Jatayu, a place where we visited during our stay. During this time, I was the lucky last member of Adelaide to be initiated by Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji. What a gift one could ask for. It was meant to be. As Mataji always says, a genuine bhakta does not ask for anything. He knows that God loves him so much that whatever he needs will be given at the proper time in a proper way. So I was blessed to have been accepted by Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji to be my spiritual guru. When I was young, I remember my dad's teaching, and I think Gayatriprana Mataji did mention that Mata, Pita, Guru, and Devam, mom, dad, and a spiritual guru, and God. So mother who brought us to this world and showered us with seeds of love to self and to all of us around us. My dad planted the seed of knowledge, including the spiritual knowledge and the importance of prayers, going to temple, and introduced me to the God. And now I have the guru to guide my spiritual journey. Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji had shown us her great personalities. She came into this world to fulfill some mission and gave directions to so many of us to propel their goals in life. Mataji's physical body may have left this world, but her soul, her legacy, her spiritual teachings and guidance are filled around each of us and within myself. I can close my eyes and visualize still Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji sitting in that chair, waiting patiently for our arrival, like Wendy mentioned, watching us walking across the road into that open door towards the Sarada Ma, joining the morning and evening prayers and giving us her blessings that would stay forever within me. I'm truly blessed to have Mataji as my guru and my spiritual guide. My guru has shared her teachings and shown me the path, and it is my role to walk on that path till I meet her again. My salutation to my guru, Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. That was beautiful. I met Vicky during one of our morning sessions years back in Ross River when we had a Ross River, and she was maybe very almost that time she arrived, and with two little children, and she said she did a night duty and did, instead of going to sleep, she came with her two little 4 and 2 or something like that. And they came to have, Mataji wasn't present. We were just Nirmala, David, and we were all there running the session of morning prayers and meditation and Mataji's talks. But that was beautiful that you were the lucky last then. That was beautiful. All these people paying their respects is a testament to the kind of person our Mataji was. We will never, as long as we live, I hope we keep Mataji in our heart and follow what she taught us. Our next item will be a PowerPoint presentation on Mataji by Robert Grant, and which will be followed by a silent meditation. So I will.
There's Mataji as a young woman. Oops, I've covered up the, I'll keep it there. And Mataji's early days in the Sarada Mutt, there she is right in the front there singing. And that's in Trishore where she joined and worked for 20 years there. And they have a big school. It's the biggest center of Sarada Mutt outside the headquarters in Calcutta. We're going to move pretty quickly here. Whoops. How to minimize that? Yeah, okay, good. This is during Mataji's first visit to Sydney, and a devotee at that time who she stayed with. And we rented a bookshop in the historic Rocks area of Sydney for a few years. And upstairs there was a couple of little meeting rooms. So this is very early days. Mataji came to Australia twice before coming permanently to start the centre.
Which one is you?
I'm not there. This is pre my time. And there's a very young Gayatriprana.
Wow.
How she looked when she arrived. This is just literally within the first few months. Whoops. All right. Now, this is a very special little bit of video footage. We're going to play this. This is when we had the opening of the Sarada Mutt Centre in a rented house in Mortdale. And the audio is not very good, but listen carefully because Mataji's, it's very poignant. She's talking about the concern about her coming across the seas to start this centre. And it wasn't easy to even communicate with India back in those days. So she's really going out as a pioneer.
Face the truth. So let us face the truth. The task that we have undertaken is not an easy one. From Calcutta, letters are coming saying that the duty that we have given you is a very great one. And you are very far away. When you want any advice, you can't get it from us. If you were in India, you could just phone or give us a telegram and we could give you any advice that you need. But you are now far away and left to yourself. So trust in Ramakrishna, trust in Holy Mother, trust in Swami Vivekananda, and they will give you the strength necessary. But keep on to hold on to their feet and don't be frightened. We are here ready to give you strength through our prayers. The last thing General Secretary told me before he left Calcutta, when I went to take you to mosque, I said, Ram, you are well off. You will just go off flying to Australia and we will be left here to pray for you.
And this is when Swami Ranganathananda would come every year, the first few years, up until 1986, as part of his world lecture tour. And this was one of his very special projects. It was because of him, really, that the Sarada Mutt Centre, that the Sarada Mutt authorities agreed to start the centre in Australia. It was at his urging because the monks' order at that time, they weren't ready to send a monk. But he was very keen, as long as he was doing his world lecture tours, to get a centre up and running. That was the house we rented, first home of the Sarada Tapovan in Australia. This is we have an annual retreat with Swami Ranganathananda. We'd hire a venue, so we'd get a good sized group of people coming along for that.
Where are you?
Oh, it's in Galston. It's north of Sydney.
Where are you?
There I am. In the back row there. Then we rented a hall for 3 years, and so this was at the opening function of that. That was a big step. And there's a nice photo. One of our devotees was a good photographer, so there's a beautiful photo he took of Mataji back in the early days. Very powerful photo that is. Then Mataji here, we bought a hall in 1987, which we still have now. And so just after setting it all up, took a photo of Mataji. And then we used to go on little holidays with Mataji, and we went to a beautiful place south of Sydney. And Mataji loved rocks and climbing up rocks and waterfalls. So of course she felt like sitting there to meditate. And anyway, she has no fear of heights. And then we'd have retreats, regular retreats. So this is one group. Point Piper is probably, the most expensive area in Australia. But we were able to rent part of it's a nunnery up on top of the hill there. And they would rent out their retreat center. So we went and had one retreat there. And there I am. And there's Haridasi. Very young Haridasi. And we had Pravrajika was with us for some years. Had come from India. And this is just outside a little house, first house we bought for the nuns. And we did have an Australian brahmacharini for some years. She did take sannyas, but sadly she left after some years. And we celebrate Mataji's birthday every year. This is one of the celebrations in Vedanta Hall. And we had a few of the Adelaide folk with us, you see, here and there. And there's Mira. They would come over. And then we had a series of fundraising events because we had to get the nuns into a bigger house. They're in a pokey little house. And so we had this is one of the celebrations we had to help raise money to pay off some very big loans when we got them into the new, bigger house. And this big man here, this is Jim Wilkes. He was the secretary of our society way back when it formed before Mataji came, back in 1974. He was a big support. He passed away some years ago. A very big support for Mataji. And here's the General Secretary of Sarada Mutt. She's visited a couple of times because she's been here to Adelaide too. This is a beautiful area south of Sydney. We had some outings. And Sri Darapranaji on the right there, she's the kind of second in charge, you could say, in Sydney. Very helpful, active person. Now, a big story behind this one, Mataji in 2006, she had a twisted bowel and it became very complicated. And she had a major operation. We were all praying for Mataji to get through the operation. We were so scared about that because of her health. And they even, the surgical team, they knew that Mataji had an operation in Trivandrum on her stomach many years ago, and we couldn't get any information about it. So when they were going to open up Mataji, they weren't even sure what they were going to find and what they'd have to work on to resolve their issues, the problems. So it's very scary. But what we found was the operation wasn't what we needed to be afraid of. It was the recovery process. It was just a terrible, terrible 6 weeks where many complications. Anything going wrong in the recovery process, Mataji could have died. It was very, very close thing. So these people, they saved her life. They gave her extra years. This is just in our Vedanta Hall. We're again with Amala Pranaji. We had a retreat. So there's many of the devotees from Sydney. And of course, we celebrate all the birthdays each year. So we used to get a good sized crowd for all of those with Mataji. And we've got a retreat centre south of Sydney. And we've got a nice statue of Buddha from Bali. And we always would gather around and have a group photograph around the Buddha after the retreat. And we've got, this is at the back of the retreat property. It overlooks the upper Kangaroo Valley, a really beautiful view and very, very high precipitous cliff. And of course, our friend here, Mataji, would always like to go to the edge of the cliff there and look over. Oh, here's another little video. Mataji gave a talk at a big international conference in a beautiful in Sydney's beautiful recital hall. So we'll just watch this.
Yoga Chittavrutti Nirodha. What is yoga? Chittavrutti Nirodha. All the emotions, the impulses, the upsurges in the mind, control them. Through self-analysis, there's no other way. Through self-analysis, you control them. Only then can you have peace of mind, not otherwise. That is what Vedanta is asking you to do. Vedanta is asking you to control the emotions. How can you control the emotions? When the heart is convulsed with emotions, pause, think about it, understand. Don't give in to the pulse of the emotions. Understand what is happening in you. You have got a very powerful mind. You have got a very powerful buddhi. You have got a very powerful discriminative instrument. God has given a very powerful instrument within us. Use that. Yoga Chittavrutti Nirodha.
Just another photo, Mataji giving a talk in our Vedanta hall. And then we used to attend a lot of special events, and very kindly, then Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Christina Keneally, she organised a special women's interfaith event in the New South Wales Parliament. And Mataji, being part of many interfaith groups, she was invited. And that's just near the front door of the Sarada Pavilion in Sydney. Mataji loved this flower, beautiful big flower. And very sad event. This was the farewell function we had in Vedanta Hall before Mataji returned to India. Had a very big crowd that day. Now a few shots from Adelaide. What I believe is the very first visit. January 1983 is what I recall. So there's Dr. Ravindran there. And there's a Chandran, a very impressive moustache there. And I think the following year, I remember Dr. Ravindran hired a room in one hospital. We had a one-day retreat there with Mataji. So I'm sure for you, many of you see some familiar faces. Who?
Sunita.
That's it.
That's
there.
Sunita, yeah.
That's Sunita there,
Yeah.
beside Mataji.
Yep. There's Ramesh.
Oh, Ramesh there, yeah.
Shankari.
There.
No, not
Oh,
that.
there's Shankari, yeah. Gauri, yeah, there's Gauri.
Yeah.
Dr. Ravindran just there. Yeah. Another one the following year with Deera Pranaji, who Mataji worked with for 20 years in Trishaw. She came for a visit, so we came to Adelaide.
Yep, in the red jumper.
There's, yeah.
And there's Auntie Padma.
Oh, yeah, there's Auntie Padma.
Padma.
Yeah.
Auntie
Yeah.
Rajesh.
Yeah.
Auntie Padmini.
How beautiful you all were. Then, of course, we had many retreats up at the Carters over the years. We have a nice group photograph.
Where? Oh yeah, my grandfather.
Oh, yeah, there's your grandfather. Yeah. That's right. He used to come along for all this. That's David there, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, look at David. He's such a young man. He looks like a student.
Yeah.
Are you? I don't know who that is. There's your mum. There you are. Isn't that Sarika there?
Yes.
Yeah, there you are, Sarika, behind
Sham.
Sham. And then we remember you rented that house. And now, back with the Vimala Pranaji came. She's again long time sister nun with Mataji since way back. So she came to visit. Yeah, that's Prema. And then there's a bit of a story about this. The second house that the society rented, we stayed there a couple of times. The first time we stayed there, after the first night, Mataji told me, "There's something here." And I said, "Mataji, what do you mean?" And she said, "There's a ghost here." And I said, I asked Mataji, "Did you see something?" She said, "No, but I can feel it." And then afterwards, this house has been pulled down now. And one day I told Nirmala and the others about this. And then they told me they never liked being alone in this house. They also felt something. So I'm calling it the haunted house. Yeah, this is a retreat in the Coos house. Had so many happy retreats there. And this is at the Coos cherry farm. We had a happy day up there, freezing that day, freezing and rainy, looking nice and green. It's just a nice, happy photo, isn't it? And then back with Vimala Pranaji, of course, we went to Cleland's. Mataji went to Cleland's many times. She loved it there. And then again, another Satya Pranaji came, and stayed with the Coos, along with Mataji. Now I'll go into some travels with Mataji. We went to America in 1985. There are some nunneries there under the monks, and Mataji wanted to go and see how they're doing things. So along with Dutta Pranaji and I, we went. And this is they have a beautiful center in Santa Barbara. So Mataji spent a couple of nights there with the nuns. So these are two American nuns who were there at that time. Then a very undernourished looking Robert along with Mataji. And this Mukti Pranaji is a real legendary figure in the Sri Sarada Math. Very loving, very powerful person. Like it says, first General Secretary. So big strength. Mataji made it to the top of Mount Kosciuszko. We got her up there in a wheelchair, pushed her up there. That was a happy time we had. And in the travels we went, this is in the hinterland behind the Gold Coast. Notably, this gentleman here on the right next to me, that's Mahalingam Sinatumbi. He's been a very big support for us. He's from Malaysia. His father and his parents were great devotees of Ramakrishna order. he is one of the richest men in Australia. He has developed a veritable city southwest of Brisbane called Springfield. He's won international awards. Very remarkable man. And he has given so much financial support to us and to the Swamis. Extraordinary person, great devotion. Yeah, he gave for the Brisbane Vedanta Society, it's part of the Springfield city development. He set aside land for the Swamis, and he's also set aside for the nuns. He set aside land for us as well, for the future. But he's standout figure of the movement. This is a 2003 trip to India, Mataji, with all a happy gathering with all the sister nuns in Trishul Mutt. And the group that travelled with Mataji from Australia. So you reckon see a few of yourselves there. Big trip they had. Went to many parts of India. That same trip. And then this was interesting. Well, it was very sad. I went with Mataji to Sri Lanka just a few months after the tsunami, and we went across to the east coast, which was badly hit by the tsunami. Ramakrishna Order has an orphanage there. And they did a lot of relief work, and they got Mataji to participate in handing out boats and sewing machines and many other practical things. But notably, we went to a place where an orphanage, and they were telling us when the tsunami hit, they took all the children up onto the roof of the orphanage because, you know, they've got the flat roofs and they hang their washing out up there. And he told us they took them up there and they got them to sing bhajans while all the water was rushing in around the building from the tsunami. And they were doing that because there were bodies coming in the water, and they didn't want the children to see that. So they distracted them, the children singing bhajans, looking away while bodies washing past. Then Malaysia, we went many times. And this person here, Puan Umasambandan, she's a big figure in Malaysian history, really. That's her husband there. And that's her husband putting a shawl around the Tunku Ramen, isn't it? Yeah. So when Malaysia got independence, he was the first leader. And Umasambandan and he were both great devotees of Ramakrishna Order. And her husband set aside some land for Ramakrishna Mutt in KL, Kuala Lumpur, and that's now an ashrama is there now. So Mataji would always stay with Topuan Umasambandan, and she would use her influence to get important people in Malaysia to meet Mataji. She'd always be after people to come and meet Mataji. And so it's quite interesting. Mataji got to meet a lot of the leaders in Malaysia because of her and had some nice conversations with them. This was a dear friend from America who used to come every year to see Mataji. Sarada Mangala, she's got a spiritual name, Sarada Mangala. And we'd travel around. This is in Brisbane. This man here, if you can see, this is Dr. Ashim Majumdar. He's got a palatial home on the outskirts of Brisbane, and he'd happily host a one-day retreat. One day, he was quietly telling us his father was a disciple of Holy Mother. So quite a spiritual sort of pedigree he's got. And this is our dear friends in Gosford. Some of you know Selva, Rajan and family. We often go up there. Newcastle group, as I was talking about. This is a good group we meet up with many times every year. Now, interfaith work, big thing that Mataji got involved with was the Women's Interfaith Network. And they had a formal launch because Mataji would go along to many interfaith events and there'd always be a few women there, like senior representatives of the various faiths. So the women decided, they all got to know each other. They said, why don't we form a little group and meet? So they had a launch of this group at the New South Wales Parliament House. And this Dr. Rachel Cohn from the ABC, she came and played a role in that. There's a temple west of Sydney, Shiva temple. It's underground, quite an amazing place. So where Mataji is sitting there with that group, it's actually underground. And they've got all these little shrines, really interesting place. So they would have a harmony event each year and they'd always invite Mataji to come. The New South Wales Government House, they even had an event for women who are involved in interfaith work. So that every groups from each faith, they sang songs and there were speeches. That's out in the gardens of New South Wales Government House. This is all the Women's Interfaith Network group meeting there. Baha'is, we have a lot of contact with them and they organise interfaith events as well. So this is the Baha'i temple in Sydney. Beautiful place up on a hill. Then this was a kind of an unexpected thing that, well, Mataji, and I'm there too, just out of the picture. The Pope came to Sydney for the World Youth Day. Because Mataji knew these women, senior members of the other faiths, she also knew some of the nuns who were involved in organising the Pope's visit. They all knew her. So they wanted to have representatives from different faiths that see this as a very intimate meeting with the Pope. And so when they were talking about a Hindu representative, these nuns said, we want Mataji there. So they made sure Mataji came along, and me being Mataji's secretary, I got invited as well. I thought we were going to have a meeting in the cathedral is beside this building, the St. Mary's Cathedral, which can hold about 1,000 people. I thought the meeting was there, and I thought, oh, we'll just see the Pope from a distance and he'll walk past and we'll be there with about 1,000 people. When we got there, we went through all the security, and then there were some ladies took us into this room and they gave us some morning tea. So I said, oh, Mataji, how nice, we're having morning tea, and then they'll take us over to the cathedral. And then after a while, I realized, no, the meeting is here. I said, Mataji, this is a bit different. At the back of the room here, you see, this is all the international media. So they're all roped off, and then of course, so they sat Mataji in the front row. So of course I thought Mataji will meet the Pope. I was quite sure about that. And so she did. And he gave her a little kind of golden memorial thing in a medallion. But then I saw that everybody else there was lining up. And I thought, okay, what are they lining up for? They said, oh, you have to meet the Pope. And then I realized each one of us had to go up to the Pope, meet him. He holds your hands like this and talks to you, and looks into your eyes and gives you a medallion. So each one of us were presented to the Pope. So it was just a bit unexpected. Back in India. So this is in front of the temple in the Ramakrishna Sarada mission in Trivandrum. This is not long after Mataji went back. This is inside the temple hall there. So every year they would, like we were doing, they'd celebrate Mataji's birthday. And there would always be a few of us from Australia there to join. This nun here took such good care of Mataji back in India at the center. Really appreciate what she did. Sadly, look, this is just a few months before Mataji passed away. This is in her room there. And when the coronavirus outbreak last year with that, I I requested Mataji to give a message to the devotees, because this was early in the piece when people were really frightened. And I've just watched this, it's a very brief message, because Mataji was very weak at this time. And this is just literally some weeks before she passed away. But she straight away responded and recorded this. And it's also, I see, apart from being a message for coronavirus, she didn't really refer to that. It was really like a farewell message to us and a blessing. So I'll just play this to finish.
My dear devotees and friends, Ramakrishna greetings to all of you. My prayers is listening Chakuranma for the welfare of all of you. I love to you. Thanks.
So that is the end of the presentation. Nonetheless, I'm just concerned about the time. What should we do? I'll play the guided meditation.
Do you want to switch the lights off?